Welcome to The Explainer. So last week, a pretty high-stakes diplomatic meeting went down in Pakistan. Now, on the surface, you might think, okay, just more talks. But if you look a little closer, you can start to see the faint lines of a new world map being drawn. And this one, well, it's challenging a century of established power. All right, let's dive right in. The event itself was a pretty big deal. You had Pakistan hosting these crucial talks between the United States and Iran. I mean, these are two countries you almost never see sitting at the same table, right?
And get this, the groundwork for this incredibly sensitive meeting, it wasn't laid by the usual Western powers. Nope. It was all put together by a trio of really influential regional players: Egypt, Turkey, and Pakistan. They were the architects here.
Okay, but here's where it gets really interesting. Take a look at the guest list. Look at the nations involved and think about their relationship with the BRICS economic bloc. You know, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. Are you starting to see a pattern?
Yep, that's it. Every single nation at that table, with the one exception of the United States, is either already in BRICS or is officially trying to join. And that connection, let me tell you, is no coincidence. It's the key to understanding the much deeper story of what's really happening here. So, to really get why this matters so much, we need to jump in a time machine. We're going to rewind the clock over 100 years to see how the old maps, the very ones that still define our world, were first drawn up.
The whole foundation of Western colonial power was built on this one simple, pretty ruthless principle: divide and rule. The British perfected this in places like India. The goal was always to break up unified resistance by pitting different groups against each other. It was, plain and simple, a tool for maintaining control.
And how did they justify all this? Well, they often sold it as a noble, civilizing mission. You can see this mindset perfectly captured in that infamous poem by Rudyard Kipling, The White Man's Burden. He actually wrote it to convince America to colonize the Philippines. It was the ideology of empire, just dressed up to look like some kind of moral duty.
And this belief, this idea that a few Western powers had the right to just determine the fate of millions of other people, it wasn't just some abstract thought. It led directly to a secret deal that would redraw the entire map of the Middle East, the Sykes-Picot Agreement.
So get this, while they were publicly promising Arab leaders independence for helping them fight the Ottoman Empire, Britain and France were meeting behind closed doors to divide up all the spoils. France gets Syria and Lebanon. Britain gets Palestine, Jordan, and modern-day Iraq. They were literally creating countries with a pen and a ruler, with zero regard for the people who actually lived there. But that plan didn't stay secret for long. After the Russian Revolution, the Bolsheviks found the documents in the Tsar's old archives, and boom, they published them for the entire world to see. It caused a massive scandal, and it exposed the true depth of the betrayal. And the publication of that secret map, well, that wasn't the end of the story. It was just the beginning of a legacy of conflict that, honestly, continues to this very day. See, those artificial borders they drew created a landscape of permanent instability. And in all that chaos, anyone who tried to redraw the lines or challenge the Western-led status quo often meant a violent end. The trajectory of the whole region was repeatedly altered by just removing key leaders from the board.
I mean, just think about the timeline. In 1975, Saudi King Faisal, the man behind the 1973 oil embargo that crippled Western economies, is killed. Then, in 1981, Egypt's Anwar Sadat is assassinated right after making a historic peace deal with Israel. And in 1995, Israeli Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin was murdered by an opponent of that same peace process. In just 2 decades, 3 leaders who tried to forge a new path for the region were removed.
Okay, so with that whole century of history in our minds, let's fast forward and go right back to that meeting room in Pakistan.
And this, right here, is the crucial point. What we're seeing is a direct challenge to that old colonial map. The old map was defined by the Sykes-Picot logic of top-down control. But this new map, it's being shaped by economic and political alliances like BRICS, with nations like Pakistan, Turkey, and Egypt stepping up as the new mediators.
And what makes these new mediators so effective is their unique position. They have close ties with the US and its allies like Saudi Arabia, sure, but they're also deeply integrated into China's massive Belt and Road Initiative. 2 of them even have defense ties with Russia. You see, they're not picking a side. They're becoming the bridge between all the sides. They sit at the very center of a complex new web, connecting every major global power.
So, what's the big takeaway here?
what should we really understand from this whole diplomatic shift? Well, that meeting in Pakistan wasn't just an isolated event. You should think of it as a perfect microcosm, a little snapshot of a much, much larger global transition that's already underway all around us.
The lines of power and influence are being actively redrawn as we speak. A new multipolar world is emerging, one that isn't being dictated by the traditional Western powers, and it is fundamentally challenging an order that has stood for over a century. And all of this leaves us with one final, crucial question. A century ago, the world was carved up in secret by a handful of colonial powers. Today, a new map is being drawn right before our eyes. The question is, who's holding the pen this time?